I don't have like the strongest opinions about these things, and I don't claim to know exactly what is going on, but I do have the most information about the curious case of James Casbolt being his prime researcher since 2018, and then I absolved all of his material. I'm like an encyclopedia for his material. I remember everything he's ever said for some reason, and then our lives were intertwined a couple years ago, and they have since been like totally like blips of interaction. Now, it's one thing, there's a reason why he has two names, James Casbolt and Michael Prince. A lot of people know Michael Prince is a non terrestrial super soldier version of who James Casbolt actually is. So, there's the human embodiment of who Michael Prince actually is. Now, in my constant interaction, I realized I'm only talking to Michael Prince maybe 20% of the time. 80% of the time he was in alters, or I suspect that Hank Meyer, his ex-father-in-law, did something to him to where now the spirit of Hank Meyer is possessing him most of the time. It's the more satanic version of James Casbolt. So I wouldn't criticize anybody who criticizes him in recent days, because you're not looking at Michael Prince. You're looking at a satanic version, a satanic altar of Michael Prince that could be normal as James Casbolt, but it's likely mostly the spirit of Hank Meyer. Very satanic. The recent video with Bob Osborne, I'm like, it is evident and obvious to me. Just my, I guess it's my opinion. I guess it's just my opinion. I'm like, this whole thing is just like a humiliation ritual. I'm like, this would be humiliating to him, because I know the real James Casbolt and then I know his alter. And it's funny how men are so dualistic in nature. They have such these like separate personalities that are like opposing forces, and it's really volatile within the vessel that the person you see of James Casbolt. So it affects people, because people can look at him as like commander with a cartoon, and like looking at him wearing this embarrassing stuff, focusing on like this ongoing disclosure that is just a joke, because the only reason it exists is because the real thing is not here yet, and the real thing is not here yet because the man himself has not come into a singularity with his soul himself. So, I get critical of people who are like, commander, commander, commander. They do it a lot, and I'm like, I don't want to hear commander, because I like James Casbolt the person, right? I like James Casbolt the person. I understand Michael Prince is different. James Casbolt as an ordinary person is the best version of himself. James Casbolt as an ordinary person, just like me, is the best version of himself. The worst version of him is the egomania with Bob Osborne. If Miles Johnston was even in the equation, that would be worse. And all the rapping and whatnot. So, I would say it's a very kind of like, what do you call it, strong stance to stand on, but I would say the most interesting thing about him would be his ordinary self. The most interesting thing about James Casbolt would be the ordinary person that he is. The most relatable, the most profitable, the most abundant, the most true, the most honest would just be the ordinary man. But within these things, these people have altars, they have egomania, they have pride. And then I don't wonder why in this humiliation ritual that the super gay, Bob Osborne is super gay. His voice is just as gay as can be. He's a gay dude. It's all gay. All these people are dark. They're dark people. I don't know. And they're all old, Like, they're old, they're dying off. They're the old guard, they're dying off. It's all dying away, right? he puts in the video the description describing James Casbolt as just a rapper and just a soldier, a super soldier. He's not a super soldier anymore. James Casbolt in the best version is an ordinary man outside of the programs. So why does Bob Osborne prop him up as super soldier when he's not? And in fact, he said in videos, recent interviews, that this stuff is all coming to a close. Like, you need to start identifying as an ordinary person, or it's going to be at your detriment. Your detriment for continuing to identify, continuing to contract out to these super soldier programs. And then also as a rapper, it's not like no one's denying the talent, but in the economy of the world, it's not his best version of himself. There's a bit of an egomania. So no wonder Bob Osborne puts him in this humiliation ritual and calling him a super soldier and calling him a rapper, when these are the most detrimental aspects of who he is. Because the best versions is just him as a normal person, as a dad, right? As a boyfriend, as a son, which I'm not even sure that his mom isn't even the worst handler of all. I'm not sure. There's a very creepy picture that I keep looking at, and it's like them at Christmas, and it's like the mom and the boyfriend are standing behind him, and the mom has her hand on James's shoulder, and the boyfriend has his hand on top of the mom's hand on top of James's shoulder. And I find this to be very suspicious. But isn't this par for the course for men like him? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You might find, and I'm not saying I know this to be true, you might find your greatest enemies to be right that within your own household. But the mind is greater, the will is greater, and probably the greatest will of all would be the will of James Casbolt if he finally gets soul embodied. So I think I made my point. I'll just stop it there. Alright, check you later. Have a good night. Before I go too far, check you later. Have a good night.